Director Malcolm Reddick, the highest-ranking black law enforcement official in American history, always believed that his position would protect him from the indignities his father faced. Today, in a quiet park outside Washington, D.C., a police officer is about to prove him wrong. As Malcolm stands in his tailored black suit waiting for his security detail, one officer's hand reaches for his weapon while shouting orders at a man who could end his career with a single phone call. What happens in the next 5 minutes will be captured on a dozen phones. But what happens 5 weeks later will reshape an entire police department. Why would an officer target a man in a $3,000 suit? What will they discover about who he really is? And how will Malcolm respond when the tables turn completely? Stay tuned to find out. And before we get into this incredible story, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today. If this story moves you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Hey, you! Don't move. The voice cut through the morning air like a blade. Malcolm Reddick stood perfectly still. His hands were clasped in front of him. His black suit caught the morning sunlight. The park stretched green and peaceful around him. Joggers slowed their pace. Dog walkers turned their heads. The American flag near the playground hung motionless. And Officer Clay Hargreeve marched toward him with murder in his eyes. Mid-40s. Square jaw. Badge gleaming on his chest. His hand was already on his holster before he was within 20 feet. Hands where I can see them. Malcolm raised his hand slowly. Deliberately. The motion of a man who had done this before. Officer, is there a problem? His voice was calm. Measured. The voice of someone trained to control situations. To de-escalate. To survive. Hargreeve stopped 3 feet away. Too close. Intentionally close. We got a call about a suspicious individual loitering in this area. Malcolm looked around. The park was filled with people. Joggers in expensive athletic wear. Mothers pushing strollers. An elderly couple on a bench. Suspicious how? Hargreave's lip curled. You don't match the profile of people who belong here. The words landed. Heavy. Familiar. The kind of words Malcolm had heard his entire life. The kind his father had heard. The kind that never changed no matter how high you climbed. Malcolm's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Sir, I'm waiting for a car. I have identification if you'd like to see it. I didn't ask for your opinion. Hargreeve stepped even closer. His breath hot. His presence a wall. Turn around. Malcolm didn't move. Officer, I haven't done anything wrong. I said turn around. The park had gone quiet now. Phones were rising. People were watching. The morning peace had shattered into something else. Something that happened every day in America. Something that was about to be recorded. Hargreave's hand moved from his holster to Malcolm's arm. The grip was tight. Too tight. The kind of grip that left bruises. And Malcolm Reddick, the man who commanded 20,000 federal agents, stood there in handcuffs waiting to happen. The officer had no idea who he had just grabbed. No idea that in exactly 2 minutes and 47 seconds, his entire world would collapse. No idea that the man in the black suit could make one phone call and end everything Hargreeve had ever built. But Malcolm wasn't going to make that call. He was going to do something far worse. He was going to let Hargreeve destroy himself. The grip tightened. The crowd grew. And Officer Clay Hargreeve was about to make the biggest mistake of his 22-year career. Turn around. Now. Malcolm complied. Not because he was afraid. Because he was strategic. His hands moved behind his back. His body turned slowly. His eyes caught the faces in the crowd. Some shocked. Some curious. Some already filming. Good. Let them film everything. Sir, I have federal identification in my jacket pocket. I don't care what you have. Hargreave's partner stood 10 feet away. Younger. Uncertain. His nameplate read Daniels. He hadn't moved to help. Hadn't moved to stop it either. Just watched with the passive complicity that made moments like this possible. You think you're better than me? Hargreave's voice was loud now. Playing to the crowd. Performing authority. You people always do. You people. 2 words. Every phone caught them. Every microphone recorded them. Every witness heard them. A mother pulled her son closer. An older black man shook his head slowly. A teenage girl's jaw dropped. Malcolm said nothing. Silence as strategy. Silence as evidence. Silence as power they didn't understand yet. Metal appeared in Hargreave's hands. Silver. Cold. Handcuffs. Hands together. Malcolm brought his wrists together behind his back. Click. The left cuff closed. Click. The right cuff closed. A man in a $3,000 suit. Standing in a public park. Handcuffed. For the crime of existing while black in a neighborhood that someone decided he didn't belong in. The crowd shifted. Some people looked uncomfortable. Some whispered to each other. One voice called out from somewhere in the back. "Hey, that's not necessary." Hargreeve didn't even turn around. "Mind your business." He grabbed Malcolm's shoulder and pushed him toward the patrol car parked at the edge of the grass. "Walk." Malcolm walked. Each step measured. Each step calm. Each step bringing him closer to a moment that would change everything. A woman near the playground pulled out her phone. "I'm calling 911. "Ma'am, I am 911, Hargreeve called back without looking. The arrogance dripped from every word. The certainty that he could do anything. To anyone. Without consequence. He had been doing this for 22 years. 17 complaints. All buried. All forgotten. All about to surface. Malcolm's security detail was 2 minutes away. His phone had been transmitting his location since the moment Hargreeve approached. Federal protocols were already triggered. People far more powerful than Officer Clay Hargreeve were already moving. But Malcolm wasn't going to tell him that. He was going to let the officer dig his grave a little deeper first. The handcuffs bit into his wrists. Cold metal against warm skin. And somewhere in the distance, sirens began to sound. 50 people watched. 50 phones recorded. And not one of them knew they were capturing the end of a career that should have ended years ago. Hargreeve pushed Malcolm toward the patrol car. His hand stayed on Malcolm's shoulder. Grip tight. Possessive. The grip of a man who believed he owned this moment. This is what happens when you don't cooperate. But Malcolm had cooperated. Every command followed. Every order obeyed. Hands raised. Body turned. Cuffs accepted. Still arrested. Still humiliated. Still dragged across a park like a criminal. The disconnect was visible to everyone watching. Everyone except the man causing it. "You got anything on you I should know about? Weapons? Drugs? No. We'll see about that." The crowd had formed a loose circle now. Mixed reactions rippled through the watchers. Some nodded along with authority. Training that said police were always right. Some looked away. Uncomfortable but silent. Some filmed with steady hands. Documenting evidence they didn't fully understand yet. A young black mother held her son close. Maybe 6 years old. Eyes wide. "This is why I tell you to be careful, baby," she whispered. "This is why." An older white man in golf clothes shook his head. Said nothing. Did nothing. The silence of complicity. The silence that had protected men like Hargreeve for decades. Officer Daniel stood at a distance. His hand hovered near his radio. Something in his posture suggested doubt. But doubt without action meant nothing. Doubt that didn't speak up was just cowardice with better marketing. Hargreeve leaned close to Malcolm's ear. His breath hot. His voice low. But not low enough. "I don't care how this looks." Pause. "I care that you remember your place." Your place. The words echoed across the park. Clear enough for the mother to hear. Clear enough for the phones to catch. Clear enough for the teenage girl filming from behind a tree. Malcolm's expression didn't change. But something shifted in his eyes. Steel beneath the calm. Ice beneath the patience. He asked one quiet question. "Do you know who I am?" Hargreeve laughed. "I know exactly what you are." "What?" "Not who." The distinction mattered. The distinction would be played in courtrooms. The distinction would be analyzed on cable news. The distinction would end a career. Malcolm said nothing more. He had given the officer a chance. A single chance to ask. To wonder. To pause. Hargreeve didn't take it. Instead, he shoved Malcolm toward the patrol car door. "Get in." And then something changed. In the distance, sirens grew louder. Different sirens. Not local. Something else. Tires screeched at the park entrance. Hargreeve turned. 3 black SUVs were pulling in. Fast. Coordinated. Government plates. Doors were already opening. And the people stepping out were not local police. Hargreave's grip on Malcolm loosened. For the first time since this began, confusion crossed his face. He had no idea what was coming. But he was about to find out. The sirens grew louder. Hargreeve paused. And for the first time since the confrontation began, something other than arrogance crossed his face. Doubt. The SUVs were black. 3 of them. Moving in formation through the park entrance. Not speeding, but not slow either. The controlled pace of people who knew exactly what they were doing. Government plates. Tinted windows. Coordinated. This wasn't backup. Hargreave's partner Daniels took a step back. "Clay." His voice trembled. "Maybe we should wait." Wait for what? But Hargreave's eyes stayed on the vehicles. Something was wrong. He could feel it. The way you feel a storm before it arrives. Malcolm stood perfectly still beside the patrol car. Hands cuffed behind his back. Suit jacket twisted. Expression unchanged. He breathed slowly. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. The same technique he had used for 30 years. In crisis negotiations. In high-stakes interrogations. In moments when rage would be easier than restraint. This was not his first time in handcuffs. It wouldn't be his last. But it would be the last time for Officer Clay Hargreeve. The crowd noticed the SUVs now. People pointed. Whispered. Phones turned toward the new arrivals. What is that? Who are they? Those aren't regular cops. Hargreave's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon. Then stopped. These weren't criminals. The vehicles were too clean. Too precise. Too official. His stomach tightened. The first crack in his confidence. He looked at Malcolm. The man hadn't moved. Hadn't spoken. Just stood there. Calm. Waiting. Like he knew this was coming. Because he did. The SUVs stopped 20 feet from the patrol car. Doors flew open simultaneously. Men and women in dark suits emerged. Moving fast. Too fast. Too coordinated. Not local. Federal. One woman walked in front. Badge already visible on her belt. Authority radiating from every step. She was maybe 45. Black. Sharp eyes. The kind of face that had seen everything and forgotten nothing. Her voice cut through the park like a command. Stand down. Now. Hargreeve laughed. Nervous now. Defensive. This doesn't concern you, ma'am. She raised her badge higher. FBI. The letters caught the morning light. I said stand down, officer. Her voice dropped lower. Colder. Remove the handcuffs. Immediately. Hargreave's smile faltered. On what authority? The woman stepped closer. Close enough that Hargreave had to look up slightly. On the authority of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. She paused. And Director Malcolm Reddick. The name landed like a bomb. Director. Malcolm. Reddick. 3 words. One career ending. Hargreave's face went through a journey. Confusion first. Then recognition. Then horror. No. The word came out strangled. That's not. Remove the handcuffs, officer. He can't be. Now. The park had gone completely silent. Every phone still recording. Every witness holding their breath. Even the birds seemed to have stopped. Malcolm Reddick, director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, turned his head slowly. And looked Officer Clay Hargreeve directly in the eyes. The man who had grabbed him. Insulted him. Called him, you people. Told him to remember his place. That man was about to learn exactly what place Malcolm Reddick occupied. And it was far, far above anything Hargreeve had ever imagined. 3 black SUVs. 12 federal agents. One word that would change everything. Director. The silence that followed could have frozen fire. Hargreave stood motionless. His brain struggling to process. The man he had just cuffed. The man he had just humiliated. The man he had told to remember his place. Was the director of the FBI. The most powerful law enforcement official in the United States. His boss's 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 boss. No. Hargreave's voice cracked. No, that's not possible. The woman with the badge stepped forward. Agent Diane Torres. Deputy Director. Malcolm's second in command. Officer, I will not ask again. Remove the handcuffs. Hargreave's hands shook. Badly. He fumbled for his keys. Dropped them in the grass. Picked them up with trembling fingers. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Some had lowered their phones. Too shocked to keep recording. Others held them steadier than ever. Capturing history. Capturing consequence. Click. The left cuff opened. Click. The right cuff opened. The metal fell away. Malcolm brought his hands in front of his body. Rubbed his wrist slowly. Red marks visible where the cuffs had bitten into flesh. Evidence. He turned to face Hargreave fully. First time looking directly at him since this began. I asked you twice if there was a problem. His voice was level. Measured. Terrifying in its calm. I offered to show you identification. Hargreave opened his mouth. Nothing came out. You never asked who I was. Malcolm straightened his jacket. Adjusted his cuffs. The motion deliberate. Unhurried. You just assumed. The word hung in the air. Assumed. Based on what? Everyone in that park knew the answer. Hargreave tried again. Director Reddick, there's been a misunderstanding. I was just doing my job, I couldn't have known. The excuses tumbled out. Each one weaker than the last. Each one recorded. Each one evidence of exactly what this was. Not a mistake. A pattern. A belief system. A career built on the assumption that certain people didn't matter. Agent Torres spoke into her radio. Director is secure. Initiating documentation protocol. Agents moved through the crowd. Taking names. Recording statements. Preserving evidence. The investigation had already begun. Right here. Right now. Malcolm looked at Hargreeve one last time. You've been doing this for a long time. It wasn't a question. Hargreeve didn't answer. 22 years on the force. Malcolm's voice dropped lower. 17 complaints. All dismissed. All buried. Hargreave's face went gray. How do you? I know everything, officer. Malcolm turned away. Walked toward the waiting SUV. I've known for 6 months. The words hit Hargreeve like a physical blow. 6 months. He had known. He had been watching. This wasn't an accident. This was something else entirely. And as Malcolm Reddick stepped into the black SUV and the door closed behind him, Officer Clay Hargreeve stood alone in the park. Surrounded by witnesses. Surrounded by cameras. Surrounded by the ruins of everything he thought protected him. The FBI director hadn't just been arrested this morning. He had been waiting. Hunting. And Hargreeve had walked straight into the trap. Every phone was still recording. Every witness was still watching. And the most powerful law enforcement official in America had just been publicly humiliated by a local cop who thought he was untouchable. That cop was about to learn what untouchable really meant. And the lesson would cost him everything. The silence that followed could have filled a cathedral. The shame that was coming would fill a courtroom. Hargreeve stood frozen in the park. The black SUV carrying Malcolm Reddick pulled away slowly. No sirens. No rush. The calm departure of someone who had already won. Agent Torres remained behind. Her eyes fixed on Hargreeve like a predator studying wounded prey. Officer Hargreeve. Her voice was ice. You will remain here until local internal affairs arrives. I need to speak to my union rep. You'll speak to whoever we allow you to speak to. Hargreave's partner Daniels had backed away completely. 10 feet. 15. Putting distance between himself and disaster. As if distance might save him. It wouldn't. Torres spoke into her radio. Secure the body cam footage. Both officers. Hargreave's hand moved instinctively to his chest camera. Don't even think about it, Torres said quietly. That footage belongs to the federal government now. The crowd had started to thin. But the damage was done. A dozen videos were already uploading. 100 more would follow. By noon, this park would be the most famous location in America. Hargreeve tried one more time. Director Reddick, there was no way I could have known. That's exactly the problem. Torres stepped closer. You didn't need to know who he was. You needed to treat him like a human being regardless. She let the words land. You failed. A local police cruiser pulled up. Internal affairs. 2 officers in suits emerged. Their faces grim. They had already been briefed. Torres handed over a folder. Bodycam footage is being transferred to your servers. Federal oversight applies. This is now a joint investigation. The internal affairs officer nodded. He looked at Hargreeve like he was looking at a dead man walking. Clay. Let's go. Hargreeve didn't move. Where? The station. You're on administrative leave effective immediately. Administrative leave? For what? The officer stared at him. Are you serious right now? Hargreeve had no answer. He walked toward the cruiser. Each step heavy. Each step carrying the weight of 22 years of behavior finally catching up. Behind him, Torres made a phone call. Director. Phase 1 complete. He's in custody of local IA. A federal review begins this afternoon. A pause. Yes, sir. We'll have the full file by end of day. She hung up. Looked at the spot where Malcolm Reddick had stood in handcuffs. By tomorrow, this country would know his name. By next week, they would know Hargreaves. And by next month, the entire department would be under federal control. The machine that protected abuse was about to face something it had never faced before. Consequence. The public saw a wrongful arrest. The investigation uncovered something far worse. 22 years of complaints. All buried. All forgotten. All about to see daylight. FBI headquarters. Secure conference room. Screens lined the walls. Each one showing different footage, different files, different failures. Malcolm sat at the head of the table. Still in his black suit. Wrists still faintly red from the cuffs. Torres stood beside a screen showing body cam footage from that morning. The recording is clean. Every word captured. You people. Remember your place. I know exactly what you are. All of it. Malcolm nodded slowly. What about his history? Torres tapped her tablet. A new image appeared on screen. Personnel file. Officer Clay Hargreeve. 22 years of service. 17 complaints filed against him since 2003. She scrolled through the list. Jamal Richardson, 2007. Excessive force during traffic stop. Settled quietly. No discipline. Another scroll. Maria Santos, 2011. False arrest. Charges dropped. Complaint dismissed. Another. Deshaun Williams, 2015. Civil rights violation. City paid $50,000 to settle. Hargreeve promoted 6 months later. The room was silent. Malcolm studied the screen. Promoted. Yes, sir. Lieutenant recommended him for advancement despite the pending settlement. Who was the lieutenant? Torres pulled up another file. Lieutenant Robert Marsh. Now Captain Robert Marsh. Head of the department's Community Relations Division. The irony was crushing. Community Relations. Headed by a man who had protected the worst offender in the department for nearly 2 decades. Malcolm stood. Walked to the screen. Studied the names. The faces. The pattern. This wasn't one bad officer. No, sir. This was a system. Yes, sir. He turned to the room. I want everything. Every complaint. Every settlement. Every officer who signed off on burying these files. Every supervisor who looked away. Torres nodded. We've already started. But sir, there's something else. She pulled up another file. 3 years ago. A complaint that was marked, resolved, and sealed. Sealed by who? Captain Marsh himself. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. What was the complaint? Torres hesitated. A traffic stop that resulted in a death. 23-year-old black male named Terrence Washington. Official report said he reached for a weapon. He was unarmed. Hargreeve? Yes, sir. Hargreeve was the arresting officer. The shooting was ruled justified. The family tried to sue. Case was dismissed. File was sealed. The room went very quiet. Malcolm walked back to his chair. Sat down slowly. Unseal it. Sir, the legal challenges. I don't care about challenges. A man died. His family deserves answers. And Officer Hargreeve deserves to answer. Torres nodded. Yes, sir. The investigation had started as a wrongful arrest. It was now a civil rights case. And by the time it was finished, careers would end. Pensions would disappear. And the department that had protected Clay Hargreeve would be placed under federal supervision for the next decade. All because one officer decided to arrest the wrong man. And the right man decided to finally stop looking away. The officer was on trial. But so was everyone who had protected him. Federal courthouse. 5 weeks after the arrest. Cameras lined the steps outside. Reporters crowded the entrance. The story had gone from viral video to national reckoning. Inside, the gallery was packed. Families of Hargreave's previous victims filled one section. Civil rights lawyers another. Media in the back. Federal officials scattered throughout. Hargreave sat at the defendant's table. He looked smaller now. The uniform was gone. The badge was gone. Just a man in a cheap suit facing the consequences of 22 years of choices. His attorney shuffled papers nervously. The prosecution had been relentless. Body cam footage. Witness testimony. The pattern of complaints. The sealed file from Terrence Washington's death. Every skeleton had been dragged from every closet. And now the police union was trying to save what they could. My client followed standard procedure, the defense attorney argued. He had no way of knowing the suspect's identity. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, that's precisely the point. Officer Hargreeve didn't need to know the victim's identity. He needed to follow basic constitutional protections. He didn't. She walked toward the jury. What you've seen over the past 3 weeks is not an isolated incident. It's a pattern. A pattern of abuse. A pattern of protection. A pattern that this department allowed to continue for over 2 decades. She paused. 17 complaints. All dismissed. A man killed during a traffic stop. File sealed. And through it all, Officer Hargreeve was promoted. Protected. Praised. She looked at Hargreeve. Until he stopped the wrong person. The gallery murmured. The judge called for order. Outside the courthouse, more fallout continued. The police chief had resigned 2 weeks earlier. Pressure too great. Evidence too damning. Captain Marsh, the man who had protected Hargreeve for years, was now facing his own federal investigation. Obstruction. Civil rights violations. Conspiracy to deny due process. 7 other officers had been placed on leave. The department was bleeding. And Malcolm Reddick had not said a single word publicly. He didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than any press conference. The trial continued for 2 more days. Closing arguments. Jury deliberations. And then, on a Thursday afternoon, the verdict. Everyone knew what was coming. But knowing didn't make it any less satisfying. The jury foreman stood. On the count of civil rights violations, we find the defendant. Pause. Guilty. The gallery erupted. Hargreave's head dropped. His attorney gripped his arm. On the count of false arrest, we find the defendant guilty. More eruption. On the count of assault under color of law, we find the defendant guilty. 3 counts. 3 convictions. 22 years of immunity finally shattered. Hargreave would be sentenced in 2 weeks. Federal prison. 3 to 5 years. His pension was gone. His career was ashes. His name would be remembered not as a decorated officer but as a cautionary tale. And somewhere in the gallery, watching from the back row, sat Malcolm Reddick. Still in his black suit. Still calm. Still waiting. He had one more thing to do before this was over. One more truth to reveal. Hargreave's defense was simple. He couldn't have known. Malcolm's response destroyed that defense in 60 seconds. Sentencing hearing. 2 weeks after the verdict. The courtroom was full again. Cameras waiting outside. The country watching. Hargreave stood before the judge. His attorney beside him. His family in the gallery. His mother crying. Does the defense have anything to say before sentencing? The attorney stood. Your Honor, my client has served this community for 22 years. He made an error in judgment. A terrible error. But he is not a monster. He is a husband. A father. A man who dedicated his life to public service. He paused. We ask for leniency. Community service. Probation. A chance to make amends. The judge nodded. Does the prosecution wish to respond? Yes, Your Honor. We do. The prosecutor stood. But first, we'd like to call a witness. Director Malcolm Reddick. The gallery buzzed. Hargreave's attorney jumped up. Objection. This is highly irregular. The victim testifying at sentencing. Director Reddick is testifying as a federal official, the prosecutor interrupted. Not as a victim. He has information relevant to sentencing. The judge considered. I'll allow it. Director Reddick, please take the stand. Malcolm rose from the gallery. Walked forward slowly. Every eye in the room followed him. He took the oath. Sat in the witness chair. Looked out at the courtroom. And then he spoke. That morning in the park. His voice was calm. Measured. The same voice that had asked Hargreave if there was a problem. I wasn't there by accident. Hargreave's head snapped up. For 6 months, the FBI has been conducting compliance audits of local police departments with federal oversight. Unannounced. Undercover. The gallery went silent. I was in that park as part of an audit. To observe. To document. To see how officers interacted with members of the public when they believed no one important was watching. Malcolm looked directly at Hargreave. Officer Hargreave wasn't unlucky. He was exposed. Hargreave's attorney was on his feet. This is entrapment. The defense moves for. Sit down, the judge said quietly. The attorney sat. Malcolm continued. I stood in a public park. In a suit. Waiting for a car. I broke no laws. I made no aggressive movements. I offered identification. I complied with every command. His voice hardened slightly. And I was handcuffed. Humiliated. Told to remember my place. He paused. That's not entrapment. That's character revealed under pressure. The room was absolutely still. Officer Hargreave didn't arrest me because I did something wrong. He arrested me because of what I look like. Because of assumptions he made the moment he saw me. Malcolm stood. Your Honor, I'm not here to ask for harsh sentencing. I'm here to explain why this matters. He looked at Hargreave. This man has been protected for 22 years. Promoted. Defended. Enabled. By a system that prioritized loyalty over justice. That buried complaints instead of addressing them. That chose comfort over accountability. His voice filled the room. That system ends today. Not with revenge. With consequence. Real, meaningful, unavoidable consequence. He turned to the judge. Whatever sentence you impose, let it be a message. Not just to Officer Hargreave. But to every officer who thinks a badge is a shield from accountability. It isn't. Not anymore. Malcolm returned to his seat. The room remained silent. The judge took a long moment. Then spoke. Officer Clay Hargreave. You are hereby sentenced to 3 years in federal custody. Upon release, you will be permanently barred from law enforcement service. Your pension is forfeit. Hargreave's mother sobbed. His wife buried her face in her hands. Hargreave himself stood motionless. Broken. The gavel fell. And 22 years of immunity ended with a single sound. The cameras were gone. The crowds had dispersed. And Malcolm Reddick was just a father picking up his son from school. His black SUV pulled into the school parking lot. 3:47 p.m. The same time he picked up Elijah every day when he wasn't traveling. Today felt different. Everything felt different. Elijah climbed into the passenger seat. 15 years old. Tall like his father. Quiet like his mother had been. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, son." They pulled out of the parking lot. Drove in silence for a few blocks. The city passed by outside the windows. Malcolm knew the question was coming. Had been coming for 5 weeks. Since the video went viral. Since the trial began. Since the whole country learned that the FBI director had been arrested in a park. Elijah had watched it all. Heard the commentary. Seen the footage played on every channel. He finally spoke. "Dad? Yeah? Were you scared?" Malcolm considered the question. The honest answer. Not the easy one. Every day. Elijah looked at him. "But you didn't show it. In the video. You didn't look scared at all." "That's not the same as not feeling it." They stopped at a red light. Malcolm turned to face his son. "I've been stopped before, Elijah. More times than I can count. When I was your age. When I was in college. When I was a young agent. When I became a director." He paused. "The fear never goes away. You just learn to control it." "How?" "Practice. Training. Understanding that how you react determines what happens next." The light turned green. They drove on. "But here's the thing I need you to understand." Malcolm's voice dropped lower. More serious. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is standing anyway. Speaking anyway. Fighting anyway. Even when you're terrified." Elijah nodded slowly. "Is that why you didn't fight back? In the park?" "I didn't fight back because fighting would have given him what he wanted. An excuse. A reason to escalate. A way to make me the villain." Malcolm shook his head. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand still. Let them reveal themselves. Let the truth speak louder than your anger." They drove in silence for another block. Then Elijah spoke again. "That officer. Hargreeve. What happens to him now?" "He goes to prison. Serves his time. Comes out a different man. Maybe better. Maybe worse. That's up to him." "Do you feel sorry for him?" Malcolm thought about the question. "I feel sorry that he never learned to see people as people. I feel sorry that the system protected him instead of correcting him. I feel sorry that it took this to finally stop him." He glanced at his son. "But I don't feel sorry that there were consequences. Actions have to mean something. Otherwise, nothing ever changes." They pulled into their driveway. The house stood quiet. Peaceful. A home. A refuge. A place where a father could be just a father. Malcolm turned off the engine. Sat for a moment. "Elijah. Yeah? I need you to know something. What happened in that park? It wasn't about me being the FBI director. It was about me being a black man in America. The title didn't protect me. It just made sure there were consequences this time." He looked at his son. "But there are millions of people who go through what I went through and never get justice. Never get their story told. Never see the officers who wronged them face any accountability." His voice grew firm. "That's why I did this. Not for revenge. For them. For every person who was stopped and searched and humiliated and never had anyone stand up for them." Elijah nodded. "I understand, Dad." "Good." They got out of the car. Walked toward the house. The evening sun was setting. Orange and gold across the sky. Another day ending. Another chapter closing. But the story wasn't over. It was never over. Every day brought new challenges. New fights. New moments that required courage. Malcolm put his arm around his son's shoulders. "Come on. Let's see what's for dinner." They walked inside together. Father and son. Survivor and witness. 2 generations linked by struggle and hope and the unshakable belief that things could get better. If enough people were willing to stand. If this story moved you, if it made you think about courage and dignity and what it really means to stand when everything tells you to stay silent, then share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel and turn on that notification bell so you never miss another story. We share stories like this every week. Stories of justice. Stories of courage. Stories of people who refused to bend when the world tried to break them. Drop a comment below and tell us your story. Have you ever had to find courage when you were afraid? Have you ever stood up when staying silent would have been easier? Your words might inspire someone who is going through something similar right now. Because the world changes one person at a time. One choice at a time. One moment of courage at a time. What will your moment be? Until next time, remember. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's standing anyway. Every single time. Stay strong. Stay brave. And never forget your worth.